Welcome back to the Annie Frey Show. Thanks for being with us on a Monday before Election Day. And in Missouri, Illinois have too, but we've been voting for weeks and weeks and weeks. Did you know in Missouri you can early vote right now? Well, we were able to snag the Secretary of State of the state of Missouri. Jay Ashcroft is in here with us right now. Secretary, thank you for coming in and hanging out with us today.
Thanks for having me. What a beautiful day.
It is. It's a gorgeous day out there. I want to first and foremost ask the question that affects the most people listening right now, and you can speak to what you know nationally, but also what you've done in the state of Missouri. I don't know how you feel about the mood of the election right now, but I heard Tucker Carlson say this at the Trump rally this weekend, and it's exactly what I was thinking. I don't think that I would believe results that indicated right now that Kamala Harris is beating Trump, because there's nothing out there that tells my everyday common sense brain that she's winning. The question everyone has is, are these elections going to be secure?
Well, I would have a real tough time believing that Kamala Harris won Missouri.
Yeah.
But you know what? I trust Missouri's elections. I haven't liked all the outcomes we've had the last couple of months, but I trust them.
Yeah.
And I want the people to trust them. I invite people that don't trust them to be a part of them, to be poll watchers, to be poll workers, to come behind and see. We're not going to be boarding up windows. We're not looking at ones and zeros on a machine. The paper ballot is the official ballot. That's what we use for the audits when we hand count them. That's when we use if there's a recount. I mean, look at what we've done to get rid of the private money in elections. Look what we've done to get rid of ballot curing, to outlaw ballot drop boxes. Look at what we've done with implementing a real government photo ID requirement. I wish we could have gotten the legislature to allow us to use those photo IDs to prove citizenship also. Mm-hmm. But I trust the elections in Missouri. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, other places. I'm from Missouri. You're going to have to show me that they're well run before I'm necessarily going to trust it.
Georgia made a lot of changes from 2020 to now. What can you say to what we've heard about those Georgia laws? They lost the All-Star game over it, and in like the most screw around and find out way, they decided, well, we'll take the World Series. You can have the All-Star game. And then they won. Like, if karma wasn't smiling down in that moment in time. But what do you think about Georgia? Georgia's a must-win for Donald Trump.
You know, I think the Department of Justice is scared with what's happening. That's why they're suing states like Alabama and Virginia and other states. They've seen that changes have been made to make our elections more secure, to actually put the power and make sure that it's exercised by the voters. And we see politicians on one side of the aisle that scares them because they don't trust that people will make the decision they want. And I'm encouraged by the fact, it's kind of perverse, I'm encouraged by the fact that the Department of Injustice is suing states. But what it means is they think that it's working, that they're doing the right things, and they're scared. So, you know, I am a big believer in we the people getting involved. Elections are not for candidates, they're for we the people.
Amen.
And the more we need more people getting out to vote. We need more people being a part of the process. We need more people being part of the teams that go ahead and do the certification afterwards. I mean, even on election night, and in Missouri, 10 or 11 o'clock at night, we'll know who's won all the elections. It's something I'm proud of. But even after that, there's going to be 2 weeks in Missouri of local election authorities going back over things. We want the people of the state involved in that. We don't have anything to hide except how any single individual votes their ballot.
Yeah, amen to that. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft in studio with us right now. I think that a lot of people know just enough to be super dangerous when it comes to like what makes an election secure, but also what did we see in 2020 that made you go, oh my gosh, what are we doing in these particular states? Like, what are the big red flags for you when this is your job to make sure Missouri is secure?
Well, even in Missouri, our legislature passed a law that will allow anybody who wanted to mail in their ballot. I came out against that, was defeated by the legislature. They passed it anyway, but that's ridiculous. We're trusting the post office for maybe the most important thing that we do as citizens? No. We want people to show up in person. We want them to prove who they are with that government ID. We saw states that had the willy-nilly use of drop boxes, and then on camera you see people coming suddenly wearing gloves right after there was a prosecution for vote fraud in Arizona, dumping in just packets and tens, if not hundreds of ballots at a time.
Paper cuts are dangerous. You can get infected.
We saw Pennsylvania where they just ignored their own constitution with regard to absentee ballots. I mean, we saw it up in Wisconsin, and then look at the trouble they had in the quote trouble that just happened to happen in Arizona on Election Day in Republican-leaning polling precincts.
Yeah.
Secretary Ashcroft, I think, talking about what's in the rearview mirror, most people are looking ahead to this election and saying, okay, based on what you've done in Missouri, I don't hear a lot of people going, oh, man, I'm really worried about Missouri. It's the swing states that have had so much attention on them and people trying to manipulate those laws. What are you most concerned about going into this election, maybe in other states?
Worried about absentee ballots, worried about rolls that haven't been cleaned. We saw a lawsuit up in Michigan where Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, has just refused to clean the rolls.
Yeah.
Right now she says, well, I can't do it. Well, A, you can. The federal law prohibiting it is unconstitutional. States are given control of who's allowed to register to vote. That's in Article 1, Section 2. It's in the Presidential Electors Clause and in the 17th Amendment. I mean, what's happening in Virginia with the governor? He's right. The Department of Injustice is wrong, and I wish he'd point that out. But the inflated voter rolls, there are people that are still concerned that we're going to see ballots injected into the system. There were concerns about that in the Pennsylvania area. Frankly, there's got to be more transparency into the system, and we've got to require people to vote in person.
Converse to that, what have you seen in these states that you're encouraged by? What movements have they made that's better than 2020?
Well, I'm encouraged that one of the candidates for president is finally getting out into interviews and answering questions. And I think
the more she does that, the better.
The question is different, but the answer is always the same. And I think that people of the country are realizing, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to go back to what we've had the last 4 years. And on the other side, you've got the vice presidential candidate on the other side is doing a great job, I think, of saying, do you want where you are now or 4 years ago? But look, not even the president of the United States is better off now than he was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, 4 years ago, he could actually pick his flavor of ice cream.
Man, this doesn't have anything to do with your job specifically, but you're a political observer. Do you think that the Kamala Harris-Joe Biden relationship is strained?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, he was pushed out. She did not receive a single vote to be the presidential nominee this year.
That's really quite something.
There were millions of votes for Joe Biden. Now, you could talk a lot about how ridiculous their primary was, how they refused to let people be on the ballot, how they threw them off the ballot, how it was machined and gamed to make sure that it was Joe Biden. But for her to talk about democracy and we're a constitutional republic, but even if it were, wouldn't that seem to indicate that she should have gotten at least one vote?
One, yeah.
One?
She bailed in the other primary before it happened because she was polling so terribly.
She heard the message loud and clear.
Yeah, she did then. Okay, so we've got Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft here with us. Secretary, at this point in time, we've been dealing with this for a while now. People are developing calluses to the election. Everybody, even whether you're super excited for it to get here or not because you're worried or excited about your candidate and how they're doing, there is a lot of money in businesses and third parties surrounding those elections. And usually the product that these third parties are trying to acquire is the voter. And there's a lot of data that gets put out of there. You get asked a lot of questions. People become super skeptical. Sometimes it's a poll that it'd be good to participate in that. Sometimes it may not be. What do you want to tell voters in the state of Missouri right now, or anybody else listening, how to approach these last few days smartly?
Well, frequently, if they're not charging you, they're selling you. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. We want to make sure that the people of Missouri know where to get factual information about our elections. We'll leave the information about candidates to the candidates and to the campaigns. But when it comes to knowing when you can vote, what you need to vote, where to vote, when the polling places are open, we want them going to the Secretary of State's website. We've heard concerns from individuals that were reached by a third party that said they could sign up to have a reserved appointment for when they wanted to vote absentee. We don't do reserved appointments. We do treat everybody pretty democratically. Whoever shows up first, you're first in line. And we just want to make sure that when people are giving out their data, they know who they're giving it out to and they're doing it intentionally. And they know that they're getting the truth, because there's, no offense to radio stations, I mean include TV stations, not every political ad is honest. Let's just put it that way. And there are a lot of scammers and grifters involved in the process. They don't care about the outcome. They just care about using you, either your money or your data, to get money.
Well, and that's the thing about advertising candidates at this time of the election. Usually there are truths that are said, but it's never the full context. It's never the whole story. So we all have to do our own research.
I learn a lot about myself when I run. It's
Yeah.
amazing that I don't remember that about myself if it's true.
You got to have the thickest skin. I don't know how you guys do it. Let's take a quick break. We're going to keep the Secretary of State here in Missouri around for another break, because we are going to talk about all of these amendments that Missourians need to know about and may have questions about. All right, Taylor Swift. I'm really waiting for her to show up somewhere and not sing and tell us who she's going to vote for.
Just walk
she's
on
running out of
stage.
time. Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft in here with us. Did you see that Beyonce went and spoke for 4 minutes and didn't perform at the Kamala Harris
I have
rally?
4 kids and a job.
Same.
That's the best answer possible.
Yes, I'm busy living my life.
I don't care.
This whole thing about this weekend, or I think it was supposed to be Friday night, Kamala Harris is going to have this huge rally. She did have a huge rally. Beyonce was there. She spoke for 4 minutes. She didn't sing. I would be so ticked if I were there, even if I was definitely still going to vote for Kamala. We've got, as I said, the Secretary of State in here, and there are a lot of things for Missourians to consider on their ballots this year. We're going to do this for Illinois, but there's a lot less going on in Illinois because we are not electing our statewides in this election. We do that in the off years. So let me first let you tee this up, Secretary. The ballot measures, what people need to understand when they get there and they look at their ballot. A lot of people think they're going to walk in, check the box for Trump, and then walk away. There's a lot more going on than that.
Ballots are very long. I would encourage everyone to get a sample ballot so to know exactly what's going to be on the ballot. You can use that as your cheat sheet, and as you research the people and the issues, decide who you're going to vote for or not, you can write that on your sample ballot. But especially with the statewide issues, we've got, I think, 6 of them. We've got a statutory change and a bunch of constitutional amendments. I would encourage everybody to go to sos.mo.gov. There's a big banner at the top of the page, and you can read the actual language, not necessarily what I think or what someone else would make it as the summary. You can read the actual language and make your own decision about where you stand on the amendments and the initiative petition or the statutory change.
The first one, Amendment 2, that I'm looking at right now, we hear a lot about this when I think they're advertising on this station too. A lot of the sports teams are pro Amendment 2, and I'm reading it right now. The official ballot title, do you want to amend the Missouri Constitution to allow the Missouri Gaming Commission to regulate licensed sports wagering, including online sports betting, gambling, boats, professional sports betting districts, and mobile licenses to sports betting operators? And then there are a few more points. As you said, if you go to the Secretary of State website, you can read all the details. Yep. What should people know about this one?
It's pretty simple. If you think it's good for people to be able to bet on games and some of that tax money hopefully to go to the state, you should vote yes. If you don't think it's good for the state, vote no. I mean, this is pretty simple, and I like these.
You said hopefully go to the state. This sounds like lottery and education.
Well, there is some discrepancy. If you're watching TV, you'll see one ad that says there's going to be a couple $100 million that goes to education. And the next ad will be against the very same thing, and it will say that there won't be any money going to education. I would encourage people to look at what the state auditor did. He ran the numbers, read the language, and said, well, it could be this or it could be this. That language is on our website also. I can't tell you for sure what will happen with it, but the state auditor did a great write-up.
RSG said on YouTube, on Missouri Amendment 2, Sports Betting Initiative, how much money actually goes towards education. Is that part of what that audit was looking to determine?
Some people will tell you it could be 100, 200 million. Others will tell you, looking at the data, it could be zero. So it's not for me to tell people.
Sounds like government to me. Ryan, did you have a question that you wanted to ask for us here?
Yeah, I'm going to highlight one from Rick. Actually, he's representing a few different questions here. He says, with the influx of immigrants and the lack of verifiable proof of U.S. citizenship, people kind of talking about this nationally, from nationalization papers, how are we supposed to accept election results? How do you trust it?
Well, I mean, that's why there's a certification process. That's why we're transparent about it. But he's right in that it would be a whole lot easier to trust the election if the legislature would just allow us to require proof of citizenship to register and proof of citizenship to vote. The people of this state in 2016 passed a constitutional amendment to allow a photo ID requirement that would prove not just identity and residency, but citizenship. But unfortunately, our state Senate has refused to pass a bill that would allow me to implement that.
That was my next question, because I was assuming you were talking about federal legislature. You're talking about Missouri legislature.
Yeah, the federal government actually can't do it.
Okay.
It's a misnomer, but if you actually read the United States Constitution, which
What?
well, hey, patriots read the Constitution.
What did you say?
The Constitution gives the states specific authority to decide the qualifications of electors. We see that with Article 1, Section 2 for who's allowed to vote for the House of Representatives. I think it's Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, but I got to remember for the
Brian, is that right?
presidential
If it's
electors.
Clause 2, I am going to be so
And
mad.
then the 17th Amendment. So the states control it. And the fact that we don't have a citizenship requirement is due to states failing to do their job. If a state wants, they can allow non-citizens to vote. That's why our legislature needs to say no dice.
We're speaking with the Secretary of State here, Jay Ashcroft, in studio with us. Jackie asked this, and I think you kind of touched on this. She said, Annie, I know ID is required, but is it already required that the voter must be a U.S. citizen?
The law, it kind of goes back to an old saying, when I was a child, a locked door only stops an honest man.
Okay.
The law says you have to be a citizen, but we are not allowed to require proof of that, either by state law or by federal law. And we need the state to require proof of citizenship, because then I'll happily go to court against the feds once again.
Yeah, that'll set you up.
I'm in court against the feds right now, I think my employers are.
We'll write you an excuse slip here in a second. Yeah. Rick left us a voice message on the Odyssey app, AUDACY. Here's what Rick wanted to say. Let's listen
We
in.
need more early voting stations. Shouldn't have to wait 2 hours to vote. Thank you.
That's Rick. Now, there seems to be record early vote turnout, so maybe this is unusual, but what is the frequency of polling stations? How do you figure that out?
The number of polling stations is set up by the local election authority. Frequently, they are stressed to find enough poll workers to actually make sure they have the bipartisan teams to do that.
Can people still sign up to be a poll worker?
It's yes, but not for this election, probably. It's
But-
probably too late for the training, but if you sign up now, they will call you every time there's an election until you die. And they'd be very thankful for you.
You will be there.
One thing I want to say is voting early in person is better than voting by mail.
Yes.
But this country worked for several hundred years when people went to vote on Election Day. And when you look at places where we have trouble getting the votes or people aren't trusting the tabulation, they tend to be places that use mail-in ballots or people are voting early. If we could just get back to people voting on Election Day in person, we'd be a whole lot better off.
Amen.
I'm pulling another one from a listener here. This is from Barry. Now, this is not something I'm familiar with, so I'd like to know more. Barry says, no one's talking about the minimum wage amendment, especially the automatic increase each year depending on inflation. He says this will just drive up inflation even more in the future, but he wants to know more about it.
Of the statewide issues, we have 5 constitutional amendments and 1 statutory one. That's Proposition A, and it will raise the minimum wage. It will also require sick time for employees, and after that minimum wage is raised, it will then float according to CPI. If you want the minimum wage, I don't think the minimum wage is the job that you're supposed to raise a family on. When I was a kid, my first job at 15 years old was a Dairy Queen. If they had to pay me $20 an hour, I wouldn't have gotten a job.
Same.
They would have had a robot doing that. So if you think we should raise the minimum wage, vote for it. But if you're like me, I want to make sure people can get that first job, build that experience.
Yeah, I think that's really a smart move. You said one's a constitutional, one's a statutory. Can you just tell us what that means when you say that?
Yeah, Prop A, the minimum wage, that's just a statutory change. The legislature, with the signature of the governor, can change that at any time. A constitutional amendment precludes any statutory changes. Constitutional change can only be changed by a vote of the people.
Ender, a frequent commenter on our Annie Frey YouTube channel, said, piggyback off of RSG's question from earlier, what's the guarantee that the money will go to the schools on Amendment 2? So we kind of asked the question how much money would go, but does Amendment 2 dictate that if whatever set amount is, has to go to schools?
There is language in there.
I don't like where this is going. No. Say no more.
There's no money to be made in betting that the government will do what the government says it's going to do.
Yeah, there's money to be made in the other way.
It will go to court. You need to read that language yourself, sos.mo.gov, and make your own decision. There are times when they've said one thing and they've done another thing. There are fewer times, but there have been a couple times when they've actually done what they said they would do.
We have the Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft, in studio with us right now. Ryan, you got another question?
Another question from the stream. Where do you go to early vote? This person specifically saying, I can't find it for Lincoln County, but I figure there's a lot of people asking that question.
Call your local election authority in Lincoln County. That'd be your county clerk. If you don't know how to contact them, we have contact information for all of the local election authorities, 116 of them across the state, on our website, sos.mo.gov, under elections. Those are set up by your local election authority.
So for this individual, they say they're in Lincoln County. They could just Google
Probably the courthouse, but I'm not
Lincoln
sure.
County clerk,
Yep.
and then there's a phone number and just start asking them questions.
Or they can call us. We're happy for them to go to our website, hit that number at the bottom. We're happy to help them.
Let's see. We just did that one. Did you have any other questions there that you wanted to fire off on?
Yeah, there is one more here. Excuse me. This is from Jacob. He says, what are the rules on drive-through voting? In Booter Library, he says, or at Booter Library, I saw people driving up, filling out a ballot, handing it to a worker, then disappeared inside without being able to see if it was submitted.
I think you could do that on this Tucker right here.
There are a lot of election authorities that, for maybe people with certain disabilities or the like, when they're not too busy, will send out a bipartisan team to vote you in your car. They should be using a bipartisan team. They should never just have one individual at the ballot. Always should have a bipartisan team.
We've only got like a minute left here. Jay Ashcroft in studio with us. Last message to the Missouri voter right now. Obviously, you've been very clear. Go to the Secretary of State website with your questions. But a very important election here coming up.
Yeah, it's important. Get that sample ballot. Do your own education and vote. I think everybody listening would understand that government's way too important to leave to the elected folks.
These are the most honest answers. Well, okay.
I've seen it firsthand.
Look, I'll tell you what's in it, and I'll tell you that it's kind of murky.
That's why you got to do your research. And I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to advise on how to vote on any of these particular
One other
ones.
thing, if you don't know how to vote on somebody, vote no.
I was just going to
It's
say.
their job to convince you that they would do a good job. And if you're wrong, maybe you put the fear of God into them anyway.
Yes, if they have not done their job to make it clear to you why you should vote for something, then don't vote for it.
Throw them out.
They clearly can't handle communicating a message. If everything is murky and confusing, then make people earn your vote. It's yours to give, not theirs to take. Well, Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, thank you for being in here with us.
Thank you very much.
It's great to see you again, and we will have you back with frequency here as this election unfolds, and we'll have some shots fired at all the area states and all the shenanigans that may or may not happen. But we will hopefully. Last question: are we going to have results on election night? Your prediction?
Of course.
For this country.
We will in Missouri.
Yeah, I know. Okay, you answered that very, very well.